Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for the second of a three-part series exploring the Converso and Latino connection to Israel. So my name is Michael Steinberger, and I am founder and CEO of Jewish Heritage Alliance, a platform dedicated to promoting the story of Sepharad on a global scale. Our alliance represents a tapestry of global organizations, institutions, and individuals covering the private and public sectors, thereby creating a voice of the collective, allowing us to broaden our scope and expand our reach. And now, allow me to provide a brief background or backdrop for today's presentation. Today, you will meet three very special people whose lives took separate and differing paths, but they all shared a common destiny. Each was born to a Catholic family whose Catholic heritage dates back some 15 generations. They grew up as Christians, but at some point in their lives, they were confronted with the knowledge that they are descendants of conversos, Jews that were forced to convert to Christianity. The converso, and by extension, the crypto-Jewish phenomenon, is rooted in the saga of Sepharad, the Jews of the Iberian Peninsula, nowadays Spain and Portugal. It is a story of persecutions, massacres, forced conversions, followed by inquisition and expulsions. But theirs is also a story of hope, survival, and redemption. It is believed that the earliest Jews first arrived to the Iberian Peninsula as early as biblical times, with the earliest archaeological proof dating to the 4th century. Jewish life in Spain ends abruptly with the expulsion from Spain in 1492, and 5 years later from Portugal. As the title of this series suggests, we are here to explore the Converso and, by extension, the Latino connection to Israel. Today's speakers were strategically selected. First up will be Dr. Lorenzo Trujillo. While his family have been practicing Christians for as long as he can remember, Dr. Trujillo will share with us how he came to find out that he is a descendant of Jews of Sepharad and how that inspired his connection to Israel. Next, you will hear from Ginny Milgram. Born as a Roman Catholic in Havana, Ginny will share with us her fascinating journey back to her Jewish roots, tracing her crypto-Jewish heritage 22 generations back to 1405. And our final guest is Hannah Yal, whose story, Back to Israel, is an inspiring sequence of events leading her back to her Jewish roots and also to her homeland of Israel. At this time, I would like to introduce Dr. Samuel Richardson, representing Jewish National Fund USA. He is Director of Small Communities Outreach, and he's also a descendant of conversos. Take it away, Sam.
Thank you, Michael, for that kind introduction. Before we get to our main program, I would like to briefly remind all of our guests today that the Jewish National Fund USA is more than trees. Between 1903 and 1940, we had purchased thousands of dunams of land, which facilitated the creation of the borders adopted by the UN Partition Plan of 1947. Today, Team JNF USA are the water people, the environmentalists, the community builders, the Parks and Recreation Department. JNF USA provides the means to help Israelis of all abilities. We are the educators both here and in Israel. We are the mission specialists and the virtual travel agents. We encourage resettlement from the core to the northern and southern peripheries by building new communities from the ground up and helping small businesses create new jobs. In February, we launched the Bomb Shelter Beautification Program. We were not planning on them being used so soon, but we are glad that they were ready for use. We have also been supplying resilience centers for those with special needs as well as the general public. JNF has also increased the purchasing of firefighting equipment for volunteer firefighters in the communities bordering Gaza.
It all begins with a vision of lush and breathtaking forests where once was only rocky and brown land. A vision of transforming the Negev and the Galilee, injecting a vitality that is transforming them into places people want to live. A vision for us to speak our values, leaving no one behind. A vision of quenching the thirst of Israel's population and allowing the agricultural economy to thrive. A vision that searches for solutions that will make a better tomorrow. A vision of a continuum, ensuring that we are raising tomorrow's leaders today. A vision that understands that a nation must know its past to create a stronger future. Be a part of our vision. Join us.
The Jewish National Fund is investing for the long term, from the forests of the north to the deserts of the south. The most important ingredient, however, is people, Jewish people coming from the four corners of the earth to rejoin the people of Israel to the land of Israel. Jewish National Fund affiliate Nefesh B'Nefesh makes the process easier by removing professional, logistical, and financial obstacles. Please partner with us today to continue the task of protecting and building the land of Israel for the people of Israel. And now, friends, let's turn our attention to the continuing saga of Sfarad. Come with me as we continue to uncover the story of a journey from darkness to light, one that began centuries ago and continues until this very day with our partner, Jewish Heritage Alliance.
People are coming back. People are coming back after hundreds of years of being denied their Jewish heritage.
On a history that was hidden, and I say hidden, not lost, but actually I think it was hidden.
It's a piece that's missing. People have not understood it. People have not known about it, and it's been this big secret.
What happened in Sfarad is a very important segment of Jewish and world history that was overlooked.
And they'd say to me, you know, I have really strange things. We're definitely not Jewish, but we somehow always seem to light candles on Friday night.
I started my Jewish life as a convert, and very happily so. My soul had aligned with my, let's say, my person. It's,
whoa, my God, it's incredible. My country, the country I love, is Jewish too.
Where did we come from? And how did these people come to Mexico, come to the southern part of the United States?
They say that 25 to 50% of the early colonists to Latin America were recently converted from Judaism, meaning in the last generation before they came. I mean, this is an extraordinary idea.
I would like to introduce our first guest speaker, Dr. Lorenzo Trujillo. True to his Converso heritage, Dr. Trujillo wears many hats: an accomplished musician, a lawyer, and an all-around Mr. Nice Guy. Take it away, Lorenzo.
Hello, good morning, and special thanks to Samuel and Michael. This is a very important message that we're sending out, and we hope you receive, understand, and find your place. I want to talk to you from my world, a world where I straddle both worlds of my Jewish and Christian Spanish ancestry. You're going to find that all of us here talking today are in the same kind of situation. But I want to approach it from three perspectives. First of all, my past ancestry. Secondly, growing up and adulthood. And then third, my embracement as a Zionist Christian in embracing my Jewish past. You know, when I was, I studied my DNA, and my genealogy goes back. I'm not as clear as Jeannie in terms of going back. I only could specifically go back to 1525 in Andalusia and Granada, Spain. But then with the DNA, we got a lot more information. But let me talk to you about New Mexico, and that's what you see behind me here. You see my ancestry and the violins and the ladder and so forth. My family first received a land grant. A land grant is where the Spanish and later Mexican government encouraged settlement of the Territorio de Nuevo Mexico by the establishment of large land grants. land given to the people that would settle the land, and we turned it into ranchos devoted to raising of cattle and sheep. Now, that first land grant was the Lucero de Godoy Martinez land grant from the Spanish Royal Garrison at Santa Fe on October 26, 1716. And it was regranted to Antonio Martin. Martin became Martinez eventually, the son of Martin, covering about 100 square miles in the Taos Valley. We still live on that land, my family. In 1892, the US government recognized my family land under the Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo. This is important because, you know, where we're living today was, you know, first it was Spain, then it was, there were all these different countries that had claimed rights here: Spain, France, Mexico, United States, you know, one after another. So my family would always say, well, we're this today, that tomorrow, you know, going through that. But my family were among the original ranchers and farmers of northern New Mexico and southern Colorado. In the introduction, you heard Samuel talk about that, and also Michael. That's my family. That's my family. And many families from the original grant in Arroyo Seco moved to southern Colorado. And those were the original Martinez de Godoy grant. And they picked up another grant called the Maxwell Land Grant, or also known as the Bubien Miranda Land Grant. That was 1,714 acres. This grant extended into southern Colorado and included the San Luis Valley and was known as the Sangre de Cristo grant. And in 1841, it was one of the largest contiguous private land holdings in the history of the United States. And my family established the Gallegos Ranch. And to this day, my family runs that ranch. And we still use the acequia watering system. The acequia watering system is where you bring water down in little ditches, and you have a wood block that you pull open and close to allow the water through. Well, Dario Gallegos, my great uncle, opened the first mercantile store in 1857 in San Luis, Colorado. The store is still run by my cousins, Felix and George Romero. Now, all this is important because through all this, it runs this vein of the Sephardic. And even to this day, it runs as, we run as, many family members run as crypto Jews. They're not out. Others are out. In fact, some of my younger cousins are violating all the taboos by actually writing books about my family and telling the story. And of course, Jeannie, you know this, the elders, the ancianos, they just frown on telling the secrets, but they're being told, and they're being told. I'm telling the story too. Well, my ancestors were astute businessmen, politicians, farmers, and ranchers. In 1999, my mother published a book titled Autumn Memories: My New Mexico Roots and Traditions. The book sold and sold and sold through 3 runs. Of course, my mother was so very interested in all of our family, knowing our roots and traditions. She went to cousins' homes as we traveled through southern Colorado and northern New Mexico, selling family copies of the book. Her mother, my grandmother, was very concerned that the youth had lost a sense of our own history and traditions. And so one of the things we always have done is, and I'll talk about this a little bit later, but my grandma tells us we're Levites. We're Levites. You're from the tribe of Levi. And your responsibility, according to the book of Numbers, is to teach the traditions. And so we would get in those days, as many of you might remember, an old Volkswagen van that spouted all kinds of smoke out of the back, and we'd go to all the festivals and all the towns and villages, and we would teach. And my mother would go around peddling her book. Well, my mother eventually died of breast cancer, and they found in her the BRCA1 gene. The BRCA1 gene is directly tied to the Sephardic that settled northern New Mexico and the Valley of San Luis. And many of the women have and are dying from cancer from that gene that comes with our family. Well, my DNA shows I'm European Spanish, 48%. And I don't know how I got 2% Sardinian. And all this is traced to my Jewish ancestry. But let's talk, that's the past, but let's talk about growing up and my adulthood. My grandmother had us all move. She bought one of those triple units, where it's one house, and they all stuck together. And that's when we moved up from southern Colorado. And I didn't know, but we were in a Jewish neighborhood. And Mrs. Bramer, who lived next door, she used to have me come as a little kid to come over and turn her lights off on Friday. And she'd give me hard candy. And, I just did what I was told to do. And we also had many Jewish traditions in our family, many of which we still do today. My grandma would do Friday night prayers. And these were the candlesticks she used. And she'd say, Bendito sea Dios, Rey de todo el universo, que nos has santificado con tus mandamientos. And this message is the same as was said by all of my relatives while the candles were lit and the smoke was brought forward. And so, that was very typical. And it was the Friday night prayers with grandma. And Friday she'd make bread for the weekend. Little did I know she was continuing traditions of long ago. When I would go to New Mexico, to Arroyo Seco and other places, and I would be set to doing chores, and I'd go to sweep the dirt out the floor, out the door. And they'd tell me, no, you cannot do that. You sweep it to the center of the room, and then you pick it up. Little did I know, because it was a secret. They didn't tell me. I always know, and to this day, we place a rock on the headstone of our ancestors who have died, and when we go visit them at the cemetery, to indicate that we have been there and we have visited. When somebody dies, we cover the windows and the mirrors. And so, but it really came to a head when my cousin, who lives in Arroyo Seco, he was cleaning, and he hit a crucifix that had been on the wall forever, and it fell. And at the back of the crucifix was a mezuzah, this mezuzah that you see there. And you see where the chest is on that cross? There's a little box in the back of that. And in that box is scripture, and he still holds that in his home. And he's been very reluctant to let me photograph it because he knows I'll put it up on a program like this so all of you can see it. But it is in the Old Spanish, Bendito sea Dios, Rey de todo el universo. And it also provides other scripture. It's on a little tiny little parchment, a little piece of paper. So, but the third piece that came to revelation for me was I'm considered one of the culture bearers responsible to do this for my family. And you see the violins behind me? The top one, we were digging to put in an indoor plumbing and bathroom in one of the adobe houses. And in that indoor, there was a vault. Now, some of you may have read some of Corinne Brown's books. She talks about a vault in the adobe wall. Well, this was one of those vaults. In there was that violin that you see at the top of the picture behind me, but there was a bow in that. And that bow was very interesting to me because it doesn't look like any of the bows that you would normally see. As you see, it has engraving on it. So with Corinne's help, Corinne Brown, we spoke with rabbis in El Paso and San Antonio, in New York and Chicago and everywhere, Dallas, because I knew these were special, because they were in that old wooden case from the 1800s. As it turns out, these engraved symbols on the bow are symbolic of the rod of Aaron, of the tribe of Levi, as it puts forth buds and produced blossoms. Look at your Torah, Numbers 17, 4-8. You're going to find that same reference to this. And so this is a bowl that's been in my family forever. And it's interesting because some of the rabbis said, the crypto Jews did not do anything that would reveal who they were, but in my family have been the musicians, and they've played this old time music. My grandmother told me as a young adult, not until I was a young adult, that we were from the tribe of Levites. As such, we were, and specifically I, as well as my mother before me, as well as my grandmother before her, were responsible to teach the old traditions in the music and dance that I have been handed down and has been handed down through centuries. This I teach and play the music on a regular basis at family and community gatherings. We have the traditional scarf dance, circle dances, line dances that have been handed down from family member to family member. I know that Jeannie, who will be speaking later in this presentation, she was part of that. She was at one of the conferences where I taught these dances. And as a kid, I grew up going from village to village, teaching these in, in private events as well as public events. And when I decided to come out and share this openly with a passion and a zeal, it was like, and you're teaching everybody all this. Yes, because they need to know. I am a Zionist. I am a Christian. I embrace my Jewish past. I am an active member of the Jewish Federation of New Mexico and serve on the advisory board of Centro Sephardic, New Mexico. I believe in the critical importance of the state of Israel, and last year spoke at AIPAC to tell my story as a Sephardic descendant of the Spaniards who were forced out of Spain during the Inquisition. Because of my connection to Israel, and that became so solidified when I set foot on the ground in Israel, and I've been there a few times. I was so, and to this day, I emblazoned, you may as well have tattooed it on my chest, when I was at Masada, or the Tomb of David, and the different size of the wall. When I was at the Tomb of David, one of the rabbis gave me a hamika that he said, take this with you when you go to the wall, which I did. Well, because of my connection to Israel, I've co-led tours to Israel so that our people can know and see the foundation of our very being, our culture, and better understand our history in context. This is the birth of civilization. Yes, I'm an active Roman Catholic responsible to direct traditional Hispanic liturgical music in the Archdiocese, but I understand and realize that all this has its origin in my Sepharad, my Jewish roots. I believe it is a moral imperative that as Jewish descendants, we recognize the importance of Israel as a nation and cultural center of the world, but especially for us, the Sephardic Jews in the New World. It's been a pleasure talking to you today, and I wish you all the best on your journey. Shalom.
Wow, that's amazing, Lorenzo. Thank you so much for that fascinating story. In parentheses, Lorenzo several times referred to Corinne Brown. So just for everyone to know, she's a member of the Society of Crypto-Jewish Studies, just to put that on the record. Sam, do we have any questions for Lorenzo?
Yes, we did, but he actually answered it. I was going to ask, what is the definition of a Christian Zionist? And then you summed it up wonderfully. So thank you very much.
So now please allow me to introduce to you Ginny Milgram, a friend, a colleague, and a member of Jewish Heritage Alliance Advisory Board. Ginny will take us through her fascinating journey of discovery and redemption. Take it away, Ginny.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Sam. And it's such a pleasure to be here with my colleagues. It's not usual that we are together with Lorenzo and with Hannah. And so it is a pleasure. I will tell you a bit of my story and a little bit about what the crypto-Jewish descendants are doing in the world today. I was born in Havana, Cuba, to a very Roman Catholic family from Spain. We moved to Miami with the Castro Revolution in 1960. I was 4 years old, and anyone that does the math, I'm really going to have a problem with. I was put in the best Catholic schools in Miami, grade school, immediately, the best and only the best, the convent schools, the schools where the priests were. And from the age of 6, and I know that this is hard to believe for anyone that has not had this kind of feeling, from the age of 6, I felt something was wrong. I didn't belong to the people that I was with. I didn't understand how, let's say, the ideology that I was being taught. And there's enough jokes about Catholic school in the 60s to understand that it's intense. It's intense. You're just being taught and taught and taught. But for me, something was wrong. I was questioning and questioning. I got indirectly punished, let's say, in school by not being allowed to go to recess and having to study more. And I always felt I was unable to talk to my family about this. But I do recall, as a little girl, we had to go to church on Sundays as part of being in the Catholic school. They took attendance, and every Sunday morning, my sister and I would be dropped off at 12 for the noon mass and picked up at 1 p.m. My family did not set foot in the church. But here were my sister and I in an area that had a lot of Cuban, and as you know, Cuban is family, and the abuelas and the other abuelas and the tias and the aunts and everybody. And my sister and I just standing by ourselves. I was 6, she's 4 years older. You just can imagine these 2 little girls amidst all that, and our families picking us up afterwards. And funny enough, I never thought it was strange. But life goes on, and I went on to high school. And in high school, I was even a spiritual leader. I kind of put the Catholic thing aside, and I was very connected to God. And it just continued. I stopped questioning through my high school years, and then I hit the university, a woman's Catholic university in Miami, and that's where I learned comparative religions, and that's where I realized that everything that my soul had been yearning for, had been longing for, was Judaism. However, life takes over, and it takes over for all of us. And I got married, Cuban Catholic man. I had 2 children, and it wasn't until I was in my late 20s and my children were starting to do the whole cycle of Catholic ritual that I just said to myself, I can't do this anymore. I can't. This I'm feeling inside. I'm now understanding that what I am feeling is Jewish. I read everything I could get my hands on, and I stayed as a single mom with my 2 kids. Obviously, it could not go on that I had this passion for Jewish. So in a long 5.5-year conversion, which is how long it takes, it's not easy. This is not an easy journey, and not that, I don't like to whitewash things. This is the reality. I was trying to convert Orthodox. I finally did after 5.5 years, and I did not convert my children. And many people say, you would have had it so much easier. Well, there was a lot of reasons that I didn't, a lot of pressure from the family. Everyone turned their backs on me. All of my friends, and I'm a really friendly kind of gal. So I had a lot of friends from grade school, middle school, high school, university. Everyone kind of just dissipated. And the Jewish people at the time in the Orthodox community were not exactly embracing. So it was a very, very lonely, very difficult journey. It was myself with my 2 children, trying just to return to the Jewish people from a Catholic point of view. Eventually I did, super happy. I belong to a young Israel. I have since then. I've been Orthodox now over 30 years. And this is just what fit right for me. It doesn't mean it fits right for everything. When my maternal grandmother died, who also taught me a lot of customs, I started researching our lineage because she left me. She knew I had remarried a Jewish religious man. She knew I had converted, and she left me on the day of her death 2 Star of David earrings and a Hamsa, hand of God. And she was the first cousin to my grandfather. It took me a very long time to find her lineage, to find the lineage of my grandfather and my grandmother, which was the first same lineage. I have what's known as a collapsed pedigree because at every generation, the cousins intermarried and everyone shared the same grandparents. So our trees don't go up, our trees kind of, they just kind of collapse. So there is an actual term called collapsed pedigree. So I found every single document. I finally went back to 1405. I found 45 relatives that had been burned in the Inquisition, actually as martyrs. I carried all of this stuff to Israel, and I got a beautiful letter saying that I had been born Jewish. And in behind me, here is the village of my ancestors. It's in the Zamora region of Spain, in a tiny town. And this is now, by the way, it hasn't moved since my grandfather was born there and not back to the 1400s. That last home on the top of the stairs over there, that is where my 15th grandmother lived, my 16th grandmother, Catalina Ramirez. And since then, I also had to prove to the rabbis in Israel that this town had a Jewish background, because I couldn't just go on this immense, I had every single birth certificate, death certificate, last will and testament for every single relative, but the rabbis wanted to see that Jews had lived there. So I also had to bring with me historians. I found 2 mikvaot, Jewish ritual baths. I found 2 synagogues, and a lot of those pictures are up on my website, jeanniemilgram.com. And then as time passed, not only was I a descendant, I was also converted, but the letters from the rabbis in Israel affirmed that anyone that descended from me or ascended from me on the maternal lineage was Jewish. So I have dedicated my life full force to helping people that are trying to return. We do not proselytize. That is not what we do. But I am there. People just find me. I have a website. They're on my WhatsApp. I don't know where they come from, but this is exactly what I do, is I hold the hand of all of these people that are trying to return and find that their families reject them, that nobody talks to them, that they find themselves alone in this world. And it's so hard. So I have decided that I'm going to be that person, and I'm trying to teach other people, because like Lorenzo said, not all of us speak out. There's people that I try to get on a Zoom that I know have come from my similar background, and they just, if you can imagine, hang up on a WhatsApp. They don't want to know from me ever again. I help them to return, and they are too scared. This is too difficult. And when we talk about from darkness to light, if we don't keep that light going, then what are we going to do? So I think that my mission, and people like Anna, people like Lorenzo, our mission is to show people that we can talk about it. We can come closer, and hey, nothing's going to happen to us. I am a super proud Jew. I am a Zionist. I'm a super proud Jew. And it is just something that I feel very active on social media. I have a lot of people following, and it's all people that are frightened and they're scared. And so a lot of people say, you're always doing these Zooms. Yeah, I'm doing these Zooms because I'm hoping that at some point, even in this Zoom, maybe I give one more person the strength. The other thing that I do now is that I work with an organization called Kulanu that for years, 25 to 30 years, has been working with outcast communities that are isolated, but they didn't have anyone working directly with the communities of Latin America. Today, I work with 98 communities that are isolated of people like me, descendants from Monterrey, Mexico, all the way down to the bottom of Brazil. And these 98 communities are people that I am in contact with all the time. Every single day, I'm teaching classes on Tuesday nights in Spanish to them, just typical Judaism classes. I'm teaching about the holidays. I'm teaching about kashrut. And my husband, Michael, who is just so amazing because he's from Romania, he's Ashkenaz, and he has taken up this fight like it's his own, or journey, let's say. So on Sunday mornings, he teaches from 8 to 9 and then 9 to 10 in French to isolated people claiming these roots from Mozambique, Cote d'Ivoire, from Nigeria. And we're just trying, and I hear his questions. They're like questions for me. And people are trying so hard amongst the most adverse conditions to be able to touch the Jewish people. So when I'm trying very hard I don't think that I can do anything. I'm not a rabbi. I can't convert them. But I think that what we are able, and I'm just, to anyone that's out there, when somebody comes and they tell you, I feel Jewish, there's no explanation for it. Let's not get scientific. It's just you feel Jewish. Your soul is Jewish. That's exactly what happens. So I think that mostly people are just looking for validation. They're looking to be validated that they have these feelings, that what's going on, before they even understand what a crypto-Jewish descendant is. So I think that anybody that hears this in your synagogue, anywhere else, just validating by listening, by not being non-judgmental. Right now, another project I've been working on since 2015 is the digitization of all the Inquisition judgments all over the world: Spain, Portugal, Mexico, Cartagena, Colombia, Lima, Peru, Goa, India, and it's being funded by an organization in Israel. And right now we already have a huge amount of procesos, which are the judgments to the Inquisition, from Torre do Tombo, the archive in Portugal, and they will be up online in the fourth quarter of this year. You will hear a lot about this because this is big. Up to now, these judgments, which hold our genealogy, by the way, this is what's so important. Up to now, you had to go to the archive, you had to sift through it, you had to go to boxes, Spain, Portugal, and now they will be up. And this is the only proof that the rabbis will accept that you come from a Jewish lineage. I mean, I had to do it the hard way, which is why this is now being done on a worldwide scale. And this started during the pandemic. I started in 2015, got the green light in Portugal during the pandemic. And the minute that Torre do Tombo opened its doors, April 1st of this year, our scanners were in the parking lot. So this past week, I received the contract. It's being reviewed by the lawyers from the Spanish archives. So little by little, there's been a lot of work. I've even had to go and reach the Vatican envoys to get permission. There's been just an incredible amount of work, but it's really amazing to get to this point. And that will give the opportunity for so many others of thousands, not only to be able to return, but it will give historians enough fodder for a long time to understand the diaspora of the crypto Jews. And I want to leave you with a thought, a very difficult thought. And I did it at the end because I've got my Kleenex here in case I start to cry. My only uncle died yesterday. He's the brother of my mom, and he shares his Jewish ancestry. However, he died, he's 92, he was 92. He was brought up Catholic, and the services will all be masses and will all be religious for the family. People like me that return, we will always be proud of who we are, but we remain on the fringes of the family. And as proud a Jew as I am, I have returned alone, like most of the Converso descendants. We do not return to the Jewish people with 100 people surrounding us with suitcases like the Soviet Jews. No, we return alone. So I am left with only two things that I can do to convert, to give him the honor and to acknowledge the Jewishness. I have obtained, the funeral will be this week. I have obtained some Jerusalem soil that my rabbi was kind enough to arrange for me to get. And I will go, and if the family permits it, I will put Jerusalem soil in his grave. And as small as that might seem, I want that one symbolism of who his family was to be buried with him. And two, and I am not saying this because I am on a JNF program. And number two, I will plant a tree in Israel in his memory. I am really beyond grateful that JNF gives everyone and anyone an opportunity to connect with the land of Israel in such a meaningful way. So I thank you, JNF, and I thank you, Jewish Heritage Alliance, Sam and Michael, for this opportunity.
Thank you, Ginny, for sharing with us your journey, and especially to commend you for the amazing work you do. Godspeed. Sam, I know we have several questions for Ginny.
We do, and I'm going to pick just one that directly relates to her story.
Okay, and share with everyone that the questions we don't have time to answer, we will email to everyone.
Yeah, absolutely, yes.
Go ahead.
Jeannie, if your family did not go to church, why did they send you to a Catholic school?
Because this was something that had been done for centuries. They were crypto Jews. My family stopped practicing their Judaism in 1690, and they were pretending to be Catholics. My grandmother taught me all of the Jewish customs for cooking, how to check for blood in the eggs and everything else, but they continued to have an incredible fear. And this is being studied now in Harvard and many other universities by epigenetics, the fear that has passed down through our DNA. So they were very frightened. They continued their world, but continued to, even to today, practice underground by feeding me these memories.
Thank you. And yes, all the other questions that are not answered during our time, we will get answers and send out to everybody via email. Ladies and gentlemen, it is my special honor to introduce to you today Hannah Ayal. Growing up as Anna in Catholic Portugal, Hannah's family expected her to become a successful Portuguese academic. Her life trajectory, however, changed in a dramatic way when at the age of 25, she traveled to Nepal and India, where, of course, she met an Israeli guy. Eventually, Hannah discovered not only Judaism and Israel, but her own Jewish heritage. Please welcome Hannah Ayal.
Oh, thank you so much, Sam. I feel quite moved, I must say, to hear Jeannie. I want to say first, of course, a huge thanks to the Jewish National Fund and the Jewish Heritage Alliance, both to give me this opportunity to be giving my voice to the ones that return, but especially the ones that return to Israel, which I don't think we are so many. But especially to actually give space for this to be part of the agenda of Jewish topics, because I really believe it's so important. And for me, I was just listening to Jeannie and thinking actually how special it is that I'm here again listening to her and feeling that we are actually such a little community still, because I'm here in Israel and Jeannie, it's raised in Cuba and going to Miami, and we just happened to meet in an event in Netanya, and we felt the connection of our story. And here I am again, moved to tears and super emotional with what I'm listening. So I was born in Portugal, in a city in the north, Porto. Raised Catholic, like all of us here in the panel. For me, I can say that my family was pretty much a secular family. We did have identity. We celebrated all the holidays, but I can't say that I got a religious education, although it was who I was. I was a Catholic. For me, exactly like Jeannie, from a very young age, I was not fitting in, kind of an unrest and a feeling I couldn't find myself spiritually, and it quite progressed to questions: why are we praying to a human being? Why do we need it when we have God? And pretty much in the age of 18, I was already quite disconnected from the religion and feeling it was not for me. I moved forward in life. I went to study psychology, exactly like Jeannie, in a Catholic university. And in the age of 25, in my quest for finding my spiritual place, I was quite into yoga and meditation at that time. And this is what brings me to Nepal and India, where, of course, I meet Israelis for the first time. It's quite impressive for me that all this happened 10 years ago, and I was there listening to Hebrew for the very first time. And and it was what catch me, actually. I heard the language and it was special to my ears and I couldn't let it go. Later I met who is today my husband, Shai, in the trip in India. We had a quite interesting conversation surrounding the conflict with the Palestinians, and we moved forward between Arabs and Jews and many deep questions that I tried to figure it out actually what it is to be a Jew. And from this relationship with Shai, I'm coming to Israel for the first time. Actually, I was making the math. It was exactly 8 years ago. And many of us describe this. I feel that for me, a huge part of my story was actually this experience of coming to Israel the first time. I was not ready at all to the intense emotion that I was feeling. I'm in the flight, completely focused in what I have to read or to play with my iPad at the time. And it was just immediate. The moment I heard that we are about to arrive, I just looked down and I had this huge sense that I came back home. This is something that it kind of scared me, if I can even say. It was so intense, this feeling of belonging and of feeling that I have a space here. I was quite not ready for it, but this is what I actually felt. Many people describe the same experience. And from this visit, I just come back home to Portugal. Still, my relationship with my who was supposed to be my future husband, we were still in this relationship that we were not knowing how to figure ourselves out. But I'm returning home and I'm just sitting with my parents in the living room, sharing my experiences with Israel, and I'm mentioning this incredible fact that people love the country in Israel. So I just mentioned people are walking in the streets with necklaces with Star of David's. And in a second, my mom just tells me a sentence that pretty much changed my life forever. She tells me, I just remembered when I was young, I used to have also a necklace with a star. It took us a few hours to look for it. It ended up being this Star of David that I still can't believe that I own, that I hope you all can see. So we actually found this, and for me, this is where the journey starts. I pretty much felt that there was something here that was beyond rationality. I'm going to India, I'm meeting an Israeli, falling in love, he's a Jew. My mother has the Star of David. What is happening here? Of course, I asked both my mom, both my grandmother millions of times, is there there is a heritage? Mom, do you remember anything? So the questions were many. The answer was always the same. My mom was pretty much telling me, I know nothing. I don't know. The only thing she remembers is that she's the biggest of 4 girls, and all my aunties are saying she got this necklace from grandma, that is Eliza. We didn't got, she got, but more than that, nothing. My grandmother pretty much running away from all my questions, and I couldn't get any answers. So for me, I think it's important to voice this side of the story. I was listening both to Lorenzo and Ginny, and I quite feel this urge to say that unfortunately today, the path of genealogy is not something easy. For me, I try to do it by myself, exactly like Ginny mentioned, going around the archives, trying to read the documents, finding myself literally stuck because I'm suddenly not able to trace one of my grandmothers. And on the parallel, also trying to realize how can I find myself in Israel, because I pretty much realized that I don't have a rabbi in my city, in Porto, back in the day. Today we have a thriving community, but 10 years ago there was no rabbi in Portugal, in Porto. So for me, the decision was quite, if I do want to return and I want to start a path of learning that I was still not considering it to be even a conversion, to just get into Judaism and know more, I will not be able to do it here. So for me, it was quite of this decision of I'm young, I want to hopefully start a family, I need to figure it out myself. So for me, the timing was quite important, because I quite realized I'm still not married, I don't have kids. So if I do want my kids, especially being a woman in Judaism, we are passing on through the Judaism through the mother. So I realized that I was standing here in a cross point, that I need to understand myself and to figure it out actually where am I placed. And so the journey started for me with Star of David in the hand and many questions. I start to learn the history very deep, the history of Portugal and Spain, the whole complexities of the Inquisition. I'm starting to realize that there was such a thing as Bnei Anusim. I find very important to say that as a Portuguese, this is not at all the focus of what we learn. We learn all of it. We know that it existed. We know there was Inquisition. We hear it in half sentences, but not to the extent of realizing of how impactful it was in the history. So I had to actually get into it deeply. And what happened is that through this search, I find myself starting to make what I call a puzzle between what were family customs that I thought all my life were superstitions from the village where my great-grandmother came from. And I'm starting to realize that actually all those superstitions that I believe it was superstitions, actually they were mitzvot, they were Judaism. So unfortunately, we don't have so much time to cover all of it, but I'm speaking about things like super forbidden to point stars in the night. I would get knocks on my hand and my hand would be put down. You will get things in your fingers. So forbidden to point the stars. And I'm understanding that is connected with the observance of Shabbat, especially for kids. There was this obsession that the kids are forbidden to point, because a family that was keeping Shabbat in the house back in the day, to know that Shabbat was over, they had to see 3 stars in the sky. And basically, the adults would know that they can point, they can count with a finger, but the kid that basically we try to pass on was the one that had to be very much sure. The adults were making sure that the kid can't in any way point the sky, because as soon as he was pointing, he was giving a clear sign in Saturday night that there was Jewish observance or Shabbat observance at home. There was many things. Lorenzo mentioned exactly in my family as well. When my great-grandmother passed away, she explicitly asked to cover the mirrors and to close the windows because the neighbors can't see that we do it in the house. The bread that falls that we kiss, the blessing we say for a fruit when we eat the first time in the season, the constant mentioning of we can do lashon hara, malingua, which is like a Jewish custom preventing us from speaking about others. So all of this was pretty much inside my family, and I made the path of around 1.5 years through searching, through going to being already in Israel and searching in places and trying to figure myself out, including with Jeannie, actually, with speaking with Jeannie, going to Belmonte, a village in Portugal. And through all this, I'm starting to make this puzzle. And for me, what actually happened is that I actually reached to a place that I realized that I will not be able in a functional time for me to prove my Jewish heritage, because I just have to start my life. I'm now 26 years old. I feel Jewish. I have enough of those customs to feel enough safe of who I am. And actually what I did is I decided to come to Israel in the age of 26. I can say that in Israel, pretty much the only option to do it, a return today, is through something called the Committee for Exceptional Cases, which is pretty much what we are. We are applying to the Rabbanut of Israel. We explain that we have the intention of returning. They pretty much know that our stories are out there. It's a very bureaucratic procedure. And through that, I started to a procedure of conversion. There's many people that say that we shouldn't convert. I especially feel that for me, it was great that I had that opportunity. It was a return for me that covered many points. Also the soul and the family connection, but as well the rational side of it, to actually be for 1.5 years digging into Judaism and having the option to choose that I want Judaism, that I want to return, which for me was super, super important. And I'm very happy to say that in the end of all this, which is the most important for me, is that I was actually the last in this lineage, especially of women in my family, that pretty much passed these traditions to the extreme of losing the identity. My grandmother, only 3 years ago, when her neurological capacities are not in the best functioning, started to actually mention that she was living close to the Douro River in a community where all the families were connected, and she was being chased by the kids called the granddaughter of the Jews. This is the first time she mentioned it, when I'm already 8 years living in Israel and trying many times to get some kind of an answer. She's always afraid not mentioning. And just now she mentioned it. So we are speaking about a phenomenon that the fear was so big that the identity was actually lost. To mention that I'm Jew, to know that I'm a Jew is not there anymore. But the thriving of the customs and the traditions is what is special here, because something stayed, those little signs. And I was actually the last one that got them, and the first one that quite said to myself, I'm not going to pass this on, because me, the academic lady that is not finding any logic in nothing of it, I was pretty much asking why I can't point stars, why I can't do this, why I can't do that. And I was always listening, this was our ancestors did it, it's for our luck, and kind of answers that were not fitting to myself. And I decided I'm not going to move on. But apparently to be Jewish is much, much more deeper than what we can understand. And actually I did return, and today I'm Jewish. I'm Israeli, super proud to be Israeli, to be able to actually come to Israel. And I got married. And as much as I pray that I will have a boy, I'm already a mother of 3 girls. My sweet 3 little girls, Noah, Leora, and Amalia. For me, it's actually a continuity of this lineage of women that are keeping Judaism. But what is special, actually, I like the symbolicness of what actually I experience in my own story, that today a mother and these 3 girls is actually going out every Saturday in the end of Shabbat, and we go out to the balcony and we point to the stars of the sky of Israel every week. And we are the only ones that do it, because all the others are just looking to the calendar to know what time Shabbat is out. But me and my girls do it. We are out, we are pointing the sky every week. And every time I do it, I actually feel that once in Portugal, today in Israel, we are continuing, because we are here thriving. And for me, I think one of the things that it's one of the best blessings I got was the opportunity to be in Israel, quite outspoken about it. I'm very blessed to speak fluently Hebrew, and I shared my story with around 10,000 of people already in Israel. And I do it because I actually believe that this story is actually a story of every Jew. Is a story of every descendant. It doesn't matter where this descendant comes from, but for all the generations, stories from all corners of the world with different names, but basically with the same roots, Jewish souls that just want to come back home. It doesn't matter how this home is going to be, in what shape, being it Israel, being it somewhere in the world where I'm loving my connection. We are actually the last living generation after hundreds of years of past generations that we did everything that we could to keep the traditions, to keep the Jewish traditions and until our days. And because I believe so much that in this, it's where we see hidden the depth of the Jewish identity, in this continuous generation after generation, keeping the Jewish tradition. And what is special in our case is that, and I felt this pretty much in Israel. In Israel, we feel still this kind of the last memories are pretty much rooted in the experiences of the Holocaust. And sometimes I look to my point of view or our point of view that we are here gathered today, and I actually feel that we are the most ancient living heritage of Jewishness that exists today in the Jewish world, because we are holding here strings of around 500 years, so many generations of the grandmothers of Ginny, and even people like me that do not have the capacity to prove it, but it's just there in those little signs. And what is special is that from all this, we are actually being able to return. And this return is so not obvious, but it shows so much how to be Jewish is beyond the barriers of time, beyond the barriers of space. And what is special is that we come actually to prove that this identity it can survive for generations and can just come back and be stronger, be much stronger. I say thank you very much, toda rabá and obrigado, all the languages that cover me. And it was a pleasure to be able to share my story with all of you. And somehow, as my dear Lorenzo and Ginny said, that we'll somehow inspire someone and gave some light of the path of each one of you that is trying to reconnect. Thank you very much.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much, Hannah, for that very inspiring story. Beyond description. I know that we have several questions, but we're really running out of time here. Sam, anything in particular that you want to ask at this time?
Just one that came up, and I wasn't, just to clarify, Hannah, have you done DNA testing or no?
Yeah, I was quite wanting to take that question because I just passed my eyes and saw it. It's very interesting that actually people ask this. For me, from my point of view, I was quite like taken, all my motivation around the DNA tests was lost in Israel, because it's something that the world should know. In Israel, on the rabbinical perspective, this is not even something they look at. So when I was coming from this point of view of I'm trying to get my answers so that I can be accepted, let's say, for me, the DNA test was looking like irrelevant, because this is not what's going to say anything. Today, I'm coming from the perspective of I'm curious about it. I would like to know because maybe it can connect me. But the truth is that, yes, someone that wants to return on an Orthodox perspective, meaning is going to be fully accepted in Israel. The reality is pretty much the only option is whether to have actually a file of genealogy super composed like our incredible Ginny managed to do with many years. The only option is actually to pass a procedure of a conversion through this committee. That is not obvious at all to pass this. It's not, Ginny said it, and I want to say it again, it is not an easy path. I was here for almost 2 years with a visa, with a stamp that is written, not permitted to work. So, which is kind of a paradox, because I'm actually in the country studying, but I can't work. So somehow figure yourself, there is people that are coming for a few months, returning back. So it's controversial. It's not easy. It's not an easy path. But ultimately, I feel that the ones that really want to do it, somehow it is possible to find our place. And I really hope that many of us will do it, because this will actually change. I felt when I arrived to the Rabbanut in Haifa, and I felt from the rabbis that they know what I was speaking about, but I quite had to educate them. It was not something that I felt that, okay, yesterday or 1 month ago, someone was here with the same story. This is not the feeling, it's not the reality. We are still the exception. And as Ginny said, we come back alone. So that makes a huge difference. We are not families or communities. We are individuals belonging to Catholic families and we come alone. And that makes the whole difference.
Thank you. we're sort of running out of time here, Sam, so I would like to start closing if I could. First, I would like to say that I hope that our audience has found these stories as amazing and as profound as we at Jewish Heritage Alliance do. In closing, I'd like to point out that the Sepharad segment of Jewish history did not and does not have the same coverage or attention as the European or biblical Jewry. The Sepharad legacy resides in both the Sephardic Jewish communities and the Converso communities. But the glaring difference is that there are only 16 million Jews in the world today, and there are some estimates of over 200 million or more conversos. Pay attention to the number, 16 million Jews in total, and we're looking at an estimated 200 million or more conversos. Today's takeaway is the significance and relevance of the converso and by extension, the Latino connection to Israel. As the fighting over the last 2 weeks between Israel and Hamas suggests, there is a growing global avalanche of anti-Israel and anti-Semitic rhetoric and actions. With the diminishing influence of the Jewish communities in America and elsewhere, this is a time to embrace all Israel-loving people. This is a time to embrace the converso communities everywhere, a people with a direct connection to the land of Israel. We invite each of one of you to please come back June 13 for the third and final segment of this series, exploring the Converso Latino connection to Israel. Please continue to follow Jewish Heritage Alliance to learn more about this silent but rich and profound Jewish heritage of Sepharad. Thank you all for joining us here today. We will see you next time.
I also want to thank you for joining us today for this touching and very educational presentation. If one of your questions has gone unanswered, please be assured that we'll collect them and you will receive a response via email. In addition, you'll receive an email from me later this week with a link to the recording of the event, a link to support the work of the Jewish National Fund, and a link to register for the next session. Briefly, I want to speak to you as someone who has himself descended from conversos. As we've learned together today, for those who discovered the Jewish ancestry, it's important to know that there are resources available for reconnecting to and supporting our people and our land. If this event has been meaningful to you, I would ask that you consider a direct investment in Nefesh B'Nefesh, the organization which specializes in reconnecting the people of Israel to the land of Israel. Now, please join me for a quick tour of our new Nefesh B'Nefesh Jerusalem Aliyah campus and visitor center. And then we will close with a tribute to those who have made Aliyah to our land and sing together our national song, Hatikva.
קודש יהודי הומיה ולפתי מזרח קדימה עין לציון צופיה עוד תקוותנו עתיד